So my third day in the MTC, we're approaching our lunchtime hour, and I walk into the cafeteria and there's a plate with this white stuff, and I think, oh yes, it's mashed potatoes. So I run up to the mashed potatoes, get my fork, scoop it in, take a bite. I was very disappointed. It was not mashed potatoes. It's a traditional food called pap, which is corn maize that is boiled in water. And it's an acquired taste. For the first few months, I could not stand it. And what you do is you just eat it plain, or you eat it with a stew, which is essentially gravy with a meat, or you would eat it with a vegetable like morojo, which is like spinach. And you would grab it with your hand, just roll it up, and then you would scoop up the meat or the spinach and just pop it in your mouth. And that's what they eat every single day. So I would do a lot of the cooking for myself in most of my areas. I was surprised that when you would go to the grocery stores, they would have pretty normal food. So I was able to have grilled cheese sandwiches. I was able to have homemade macaroni and cheese or anything else that was very American. And even when you go out to eat at members' homes, they know that you don't always like the traditional food. And so they'll try to give you a little bit of African food with American food. And they're really good on the portions as well. They don't give you as much anymore. In the past, they used to give you a whole bowl full of this pap. And this pap is very filling. Now they only give you about half a bowl full. And so you don't get full quite as fast. That way you don't insult them when you don't finish. A lot of the people, when they would feed us, they would go above and beyond. They would give us their best. Some of the times they would buy it, and they would spend an abundance, or most of the time, or some of the time, they would even just grow it, and they would give you their rations for the week. And so it's really hard to eat at members' homes because you know that that's their food for the next few days. But you know that they're making a sacrifice, and deep down you know that the Lord's going to bless them. So even though it's hard to comprehend, it is a blessing for them.
The food there is amazing. I had very few things there that I did not love. Their staple food is this thing, they call it pop. It's basically maize meal, or like cornmeal, but made with maize, heated up and cooked with water until it becomes almost like a Play-Doh consistency. And they eat it with everything. They eat it with every meal, with anything, everything, breakfast, lunch, dinner, they eat pop. And you eat it several different ways. The most common way is to sort of rip off a chunk of it and roll it into a ball and make it into almost like a little spoon. And then you scoop up your food with it and eat it. For most meals, you eat the pop with some sort of vegetable, whether it's kale or the leaves of some other plant, like pumpkin leaves are common, or just some other sort of stewed vegetable, and then some sort of meat. Most of the time, if they can afford it, they'll usually eat it with some sort of meat. Chicken and beef are the most common, so nothing too weird, nothing to worry about. Sometimes fish, but most often just beef or chicken. And then some sort of relish, whether it's cabbage and tomatoes together, something along those lines. And honestly, that's most of their food. It's most of it is pretty simple, and there isn't a ton of variety, but it's all very good. The only two weird things that I ate, and each of them I only ate once, was one time, so they have these caterpillar things called mopani worms, and they cook them all different ways. They sun dry them, they fry them, they boil them. They smell really bad. But I know a lot of missionaries who were never even offered them, and I was only offered them once. It was disgusting. I did not like it. They have these spikes on them, which are weird. They're just really gross, but it's very rude to turn down food, especially because food is often in short supply. So if you're offered it, just suck it up and eat it. But if you have the choice to deny it, I would recommend denying it because they are very gross. And other than that, they do eat a lot of different parts of the chicken. So I was offered chicken feet and chicken heart and livers, which honestly, they all just taste like chicken, just a little more chewy and tough. So it really isn't the worst thing in the world. I think it's more the mentality of eating a chicken foot than actually eating a chicken foot. But really, that's the extent of the food. It's really, really good. But people don't feed you very often. I think I only ate at members' houses a handful of times. I had a lot of native companions, so we cooked a lot of native food, but I didn't eat at very many members' houses. Not because they didn't want to feed us, but just because they don't have the means to. Several of the few times that I ate at members' houses, it was usually that we happened to go there while they were eating, and it's rude to not offer us food, so we ate with them. But don't expect to be fed every day like you would if you were serving in other places around the world. So you are given a little more allowance to buy food, specifically for the reason that you have to cook for yourself most often. A lot of people, though, will offer you tea. So there is a kind called rooibos, and that's pretty much the only tea that is okay to drink there. So if people offer you tea, just make sure it's rooibos or some sort of other herbal tea. But at least I really like it. I think it's really good. But they serve it even when it's 100 degrees outside, so be prepared to drink hot tea in the summer. The other drinks, they drink a lot of like juice mixes where you buy a bottle of concentrate and you mix it with water. And I personally think that they were really delicious, but I know a lot of people thought they were kind of weird. But I think it's just a personal preference. So I loved learning how to cook food the same way they do. That was one thing that I took advantage of any opportunity that I could. It was to learn the ways that they cook. But it's hard to find a lot of the same foods here that I could find there. So take advantage of African food while you can, because it's pretty hard to come by here in the States.